To just open it up, I guess I'll have the panelists start by saying, how did you get interested in engineering?
I can start. Yeah, so I would say three big things for me. One was biology. I've always been interested in biology, and biomedical engineering kind of has a lot to do with that. So that felt greatly in line, as well as I'm just from since a little kid, I've always been interested in sci-fi. I don't know. It's just my mind goes crazy whenever I think about that stuff. But really the big thing that really got me into engineering was my father. He dealt with a lot of cardiovascular issues in his life. And that's something where I really want to make an impact in the future in cardiovascular devices or medical devices in general. So, that's why I study biomedical engineering, and that's my why as to why I do what I do.
Man, that's really cool. Um, and I'm interested in civil engineering, which is very different from biomedical. And I kind of got there from an interest in kind of architecture, space, and buildings, where I'd be really curious about how a constructed space worked. And I knew I wasn't like an arts person, and I think you needed to be like an arts person to be an architect. And I was very confused by that. But then physics was interesting to me, math was something I could handle. So I looked into civil engineering, and it kind of fit me perfectly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did anyone else want to share? That's fair. I'll just share a little bit about myself. And so I remember before college, really, I hadn't heard of engineering and I wasn't too familiar with what it was per se, as far as how it translated to jobs. But I knew I liked math, I knew I liked science, and I was a really good problem solver. And so when it came to looking at majors, it looked like to me engineers were basically problem solving as a career. And so something that I was interested in, I started out in biomedical engineering and then originally switched to computer science. A little bit of the background there. And so now we're going to shift to a question that we have in the Q&A channel. And it states, is it common for students to have interdisciplinary interests at Viterbi? For example, a major with another minor, or maybe even with some of your outside activities.
I can take this one. So like I said in my intro, I am studying computer engineering, computer science, but I'm also very passionate about journalism. And the reason about this is because my mom doesn't have a technical background. She always gets really freaked out whenever she sees any tech news or like anything funky happening on the internet when it comes to like tech in general. And so I want to be able to let more people know more about technology in a more broken down sort of way. And so that's where I've landed. I've also just really liked storytelling my entire life. And so originally I actually wanted to be a journalist. My parents said no. They were like, be an engineer. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll take a look at that. And I found that I did really like it. But there are a lot of ways, not just in class, but also outside of class that you can get involved. And so, for example, I have worked on every newsroom on campus. So that includes the Daily Trojan, which is our school's newspaper. I worked there for a semester. And then I worked at Annenberg Media, which is the journalism school's media center. And so it was really cool because I worked a paid job there, leading other students that were journalism majors. And to be an engineer as a freshman with no formal journalism training inside of a fully functional newsroom was super cool. They have a lot of people that work at places like the LA Times, even people who worked at CNN, ABC, all of that. And so that mentorship was able to actually get me to the newsletter that I work on today with another journalism student. Um, it's a lot of stuff outside of my school time because a lot of my classes are engineering focused. But I think that to be able to have this much relevant work experience in a different field, I think has been really cool, even though a lot of it has come from sort of club adjacent work. But just to be able to work on something at the same scale as someone studying journalism as a major, I think has been a great experience. And so that shows on campus you really have a lot of opportunity to work on things outside of engineering if you're passionate about it, and they won't let it stop you because you study engineering. And it doesn't necessarily have to come in a more formal space.
That's amazing, Anna, and definitely just one of the many examples of how you can merge multiple interests on top of just your course load. I think one thing I was going to add to as far as my personal experience when it comes to blending two backgrounds is I'm really passionate about community engagement and community involvement. And so similarly to Anna, I feel like a lot of the ways I spend my time outside the classroom is related to those interests as far as giving back to the local community. Did anyone else have anything else they wanted to share when it came to blending into interdisciplinary interests? Lovely. Well, thank you for that.
Well, oh
And
wait, I could
yeah, go
briefly.
ahead, Xavier. My bad.
Yeah, sorry, it just occurred to me that my interdisciplinary interest is part of my major, but as I said, architecture is very different from civil engineering in terms of coursework, what you do and what the objectives are. But there is actually, and this is true for a number of majors, where someone mentioned the computer science and business administration, computer science games. There's a number of majors that actually like combine two fields and give you access to another part of a field while focusing on engineering, such as my civil engineering building science is completely focused on civil engineering, but I'm also taking classes at the architecture school with an architecture professor and getting a perspective into that field. And that's been very enlightening as well, because it's a whole different set of priorities and a different way of thinking about problems.
Thank you for that, Xavier. And so I do just want to give a friendly reminder to attendees. I see some people sending questions in the chat and even some to me personally. It will be easiest for us to answer your questions if you guys are able to use the Q&A feature, just because that kind of helps us sort through the questions and provide responses that everyone can see. And so if you guys haven't used that before, to find that feature, you kind of just look at the bottom of your screen, the same place where you would mute, unmute, turn on your video, etc. And you should see a tab that says Q&A. And if you don't see it on your home kind of tabs page, then you can click the more, the dot, dot, dot to see more, and there should be the Q&A feature listed there. So just a reminder to send questions there. That being said, there's been some amazing questions sent in the chat. And so one question I want the panel to answer is, what is the biggest difference between the computer science major and the computer engineering major?
As I like to say, if you're masochistic enough, you can sort of do both. And so at USC, CS comes in many flavors. I like to say there's the vanilla CS, which is CSCI on the application. And then there's also other majors such as CSBA, Computer Science and Business, which is what Taylor is pursuing, Computer Science and Games. I don't remember if it's called exactly that, but it's something along those lines. That's for people who are specifically interested in game development, which is a really big thing in Los Angeles. And then there's computer engineering and computer science, which is different from electrical and computer engineering, even though we take almost the exact same classes. And so I would say the major difference is, are you interested in more software systems or more hardware systems? And for most people, the answer is probably, I don't know. And that's perfectly okay, because it's really easy to switch from either CS to CECS or from CECS to CS. And so when you first start out, you take a lot of the same classes. So for example, you take introduction to programming, you take discrete math, you take algorithms, you take software development, and those classes count towards both. And so you don't have to decide which one you want to pursue when you first start. But you also get to take a class which is required for both CS and CECS, called Introduction to Embedded Systems. And so that's, for a lot of people, what makes or breaks whether they want to do CS or CECS. You get the opportunity to try this out usually during your second or third semester. And when you go into that class, a lot of people feel very strongly about whether or not they like coding at that low level, whether or not they like building circuits. And so I think don't stress about it too much now. When you get into college, you can sort of figure out which one you would prefer more. Because yeah, at the end of the day, it's really a question of, would you prefer hardware or software? And it doesn't like taking one doesn't restrict you from the other. The reason I chose CECS was because I felt like hardware is a lot harder to learn on your own. A lot of the materials we work with are very expensive, or they take up a lot of space that are just simply not feasible in your home. Whereas, for example, in terms of learning app development, web development, those things you can read from a textbook, there are online resources, YouTube that you can learn from. And so that's why I ended up choosing to pursue a little bit more of a hardware path, even though I have really been working more as a software engineer in terms of industry.
I think that's an excellent explanation when it comes to hardware versus the pure CSCI path, which is just computer science, computer information systems, I believe. And I am getting a couple questions about CSBA and what that looks like. And so I'd love to share what that major is. And so computer science, business administration is one of the emphasis under the computer science umbrella. And with this major specifically, what it looks like is almost a computer science major with a business minor. I'm taking all of the core classes when it comes to any other computer science student, but a lot of my electives and my choice classes when I become a junior and a senior can be a little different. And I'm able to dabble into finance, econ, marketing, and all these other different fundamentals of business knowledge. I like it personally because I feel like it's kind of building my asset, my tool set of skills. I'm really strong on the technical side of things as far as understanding how things are working, but I'm also developing a business acumen as well. I'm hoping supports me as I one day want to be a CEO. And so I like that aspect of things. And then someone mentioned how it differed between, I believe now the Marshall School has a business and AI major, and it's just a different major. I mean, this one, computer science and business, is housed in Viterbi specifically, versus I think the business and AI major is in Marshall. And so it's more so, I guess, which experience you want. I can't speak too much to the other side, but that's a little bit of how I'll describe my major. And you'll see that a lot of different majors in Viterbi have emphasis that allow you to pursue what you're most passionate about. And so another question that we have is, sorry, I actually lost where it was for a second, my bad. But another question that someone was asking was, when it comes to working in labs, how difficult or easy did you all find that experience to be? And this
Yeah, so
last
for
research,
me,
yeah.
so for me, I kind of just cold emailed like a few professors, and thankfully one of them responded. So yeah, that's how I got my research position. However, that same semester, I also applied for Curve, the Center for what is it again? Center for Undergraduate Research in Viterbi Engineering. Um, and that's how I get funding at while I do research. So yeah, I mean, Viterbi offers a lot of different ways that you can pursue research while also getting funding through, again, Curve. I know there's also the Provost Fellowship and many other opportunities that you can use to access research here in Viterbi.
That's amazing. Does anyone else have any other research experience they'd like to share? I'd say I dabbled in research a lot, especially kind of when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And beyond just Curve, there's so many ways you can just reach out to a professor and see if they would be willing to take on an undergraduate research assistant. I've also had experiences where there's this Viterbi webpage that you can kind of see all of the professors looking for researchers. And it's very easy to reach out to them and see if they're still interested in hiring you to work in their lab. So finding researcher isn't hard. It's just more so what you want to do research in and how you want to get involved. And so another question here that we have is, as an engineering major, there is a lot of work. What are the mental and professional support systems that USC offers or in Viterbi to help support your learning and wellness when it comes to your academic studies?
Well, first and foremost, when it comes to academic study and, oh no, this problem set is killing me, what do I do? There's a number of classmates who are actually, like all of your classmates, are kind of experience the same thing, the same kind of panic. And I tend to reach out and rely a lot on my fellow students that I've got around me because we're all in the same boat. And for the most part, we work together pretty well. Um, and it's a lot of group studying, it's a lot of group homeworks, stuff like that.
Yeah, I can personally say I've taken advantage of a lot of different programs that Viterbi has as well to like support studying and overall well-being. They have this thing called the Viterbi Learning Program, which has basically a tutor for any of your foundational courses early on, and they can support your learning in that way. There's also things such as the Math Center, helps you with your math classes, the Writing Center, writing courses, and even this thing called the Core Check Center, where sometimes you get to college and you're like, actually, I don't even know how to study anymore, and they have academic coaching and things that help hold you accountable. Beyond that, there's free counseling here at USC and just different ways to support your overall well-being, along with events throughout the semester where they bring dogs on campus, wellness activities, even women in engineering program. We do massages sometimes just to help relax and de-stress. And so I think all these things really help you feel supported as a student overall, and have really helped with my experience. So this question is a fun one. What would you all say is your favorite quirk about USC and Viterbi? Or something about the culture that might, I guess, a culture that would maybe draw students' attention when it comes to talking about the vibe of USC Viterbi.
I love how collaborative it is. I know that like usually someone like asks me like, oh, is it collaborative or competitive? USC is very much on that spectrum on the collaborative side. My best memories include studying with my friends freshman year on my dorm room floor. We didn't want to sit on my bed. We didn't want to sit at a table. We wanted to sit on the floor. And it's like you see this like circle of like 5 engineers trying to like hash out a problem set because it's due like in the next day, and you're like, I have no idea where to get started with this. And so what we would do is we would all come together in a circle. Everyone would have attempted the homework at first. And sometimes we'd be like, we don't know the answer to like number 5. Someone will always know the answer to number 5. And so we would do that for every single question to make sure all of us would be able to submit the homework on time. The best part was that the professor actually really encouraged this. He set up on our class forum, he was like, you should form study groups, like here's a thread, like, and people would post, be like, oh, who wants to study with me at this time, that kind of thing. And oftentimes you'll find like different neighbors that are studying at the same time, and so we just like did that together. These are some of my closest friends now. It's a little bit like, I wouldn't call it trauma bonding, but it's a little bit approaching that sometimes, where you've had this shared experience. You spend a lot of time together and you're able to come together to work on not just homework, but also things outside of your life. And so I think that that's one thing that I really enjoy. So my high school friends who are studying engineering, it's not the case. And so sometimes I've heard they feel a little bit more isolated. But here it's sort of in this mindset of we're all in this together. Engineering is hard for not just you, not just me, but all of us. And so I think that's a really wonderful part of it, Turvey.
I was gonna say shared trauma. Like that was going to be the words I was going to use too. It's just, the math classes that everybody has to deal with, the physics courses that everybody has to deal with. And generally the engineering courses, it's doable, but then sometimes some problem sets are a doozy. And it is really great to work with people. I'd say a similar quirk, it's very much in the same vein, but I feel like I see Viterbi people everywhere, and there's faces that I keep recognizing, even though like there's a lot of engineering students, but then I feel like I keep seeing people that I recognize and that I know all over campus and my building and everywhere I go to eat. It's even like there was someone who I didn't know what her name was, but I knew that I'd seen her in multiple of my classes, and she really needed to run somewhere, but also get her stuff to class. So she just said, "Hey, I don't really know what your name is, but can you take my backpack to class for me? I just need to sprint to my housing and come back." And it's just kind of like a shared trust of, yeah, we're all going through the same thing, we're all going through the same classes, and you can kind of recognize Viterbi people and be like, "Hey," it's pretty much that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the collaborative nature was something that honestly scared me at first. People were just so nice, and I was like, wait, this has to be a simulation. And there's also just a lot of
Yeah,
programs.
like that.
You see what I mean? Yeah, it was very odd, but not like comforting odd in a way when it came in. There's a lot of programs I think that support that too. Like there's this thing called the SI, which is the Viterbi Summer Immersion Program, something like that. And when you're admitted into Viterbi for your first year, you're invited to come on campus a month before classes start, be residential, take part in a couple classes, and it really helps you build a community before you even step on campus. And so programs like that really facilitate connections early on, and then those connections are built with office hours, collaborative nature, and just overall people wanting to help each other on campus. And so a question I think that kind of relates to this that could be really good to answer is, what has been the highlight of your Viterbi experience so far?
Yeah, kind of following in the same vein as what has just been said. I think really the people have made like USC such a great place to be at. And for example, I'm a part of the Associated Students of Biomedical Engineers, and that's where I've met a lot of my friends. Last year, I actually went to the Biomedical Engineering Society conference, and I created a lot of deep bonds there, and people that have graduated, and I still talk to this day. So, it's really the community, it's really the networking too that kind of comes off of that community building. So while you're making friends, you're also, you know, building connections throughout the industry and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's just the people that made it great.
Yeah, any other experiences? Would anyone else like to share? That's fair. Now, a lot of it's hard beginning at the beginning of the semester, and no, I guess not the beginning anymore, but always starting new semesters, thinking whenever I think back to all I've done, it's almost hard to quantify and talk about because it's just been so many semesters of amazing things. I'd say this semester so far, I guess one of the biggest highlights that have happened is there was this talk that I had where they brought this really popular, I forgot what her name was, Sandra Johnson, I believe, and she was a landmark woman, specifically a Black woman in engineering when it came to accomplishments just about a couple of decades ago. And so we got to meet her. She ended up giving us her book and was just giving us a lot of advice when it came to navigating engineering, success, and all those different areas. And so that was a really big highlight for me, just being able to meet people, you know, you read about and learn about in the classroom, actually seeing them face to face was an amazing experience. And so another question that we have here is, how has the work-life balance been? This kind of combines a bunch of different questions, but overall, panelists, how has your work-life balance been? And are you all able to maintain a good social life while participating in extracurriculars and other activities?
I think a lot of it boils down to being creative with your time. And for example, I really like trying new cafes, big matcha drinker. And obviously not a lot of time on my hands to sit down and do nothing while I drink my matcha. And so what I do is I find cafes to study at, and I go with my friends. Sometimes you can get your friends who are maybe local to have to drive you places, which is super convenient. And so what I'll do sometimes is I'll study with these friends who oftentimes are also engineers at these cafes, and we'll try out different cafes across LA. And we'll also go grocery shopping, for example, at Costco or like other places that are a little farther from here at the same time. And so we try to make more than one thing happen at a time. And so that way we're able to do errands, we're able to study, we're also able to have fun. And so a combination of all of these things really boils down to time management and sort of prioritizing things that you think are important, need to get done, but also things that you want to do just for fun.
I think creative and time management is a good point. Like I am big on my Google Calendar. It's color coded, it's full, it's gorgeous. And that was something that was learned over time when it came to getting involved in doing different things. I mean, it's still engineering, so your classes are going to require a level of time and just focus to succeed. But at the same time, there's so many things to be doing on campus, so many activities to get involved in. And as long as you're smart with your time, there's definitely space to do other things. I'm not going to act like I've never had a late night on campus, but it's often due to my own doing and not because of my class.
It's definitely not easy for someone with really terrible time management skills. Hi. You just have a bunch of things, and if you don't organize it well, you're eventually gonna, it's gonna feel a little bit like, oh, what, I'm drowning in so much stuff, but like there are ways to make it work. I have seen some really scary calendars though. So you gotta budget time. You really have to learn how to, you're gonna need it the rest of your life, so you might as well learn it now.
That's fair. And for context, like I definitely am someone that have club meetings this day, an exam one day, and then like go to the concert the next day, like on the same week. So it's possible, but yeah, it's all about budgeting your time and how you want it to look. And so we've seen a couple questions about changing majors, specifically how difficult is that process, and even one for me about what was the experience of switching from biomedical to computer science. And so I can share a little bit, and then if anyone else has any experience, I'd love to hear that as well. So changing majors in Viterbi is quite simple. Luckily, once you're admitted into the school, you're able to switch between any engineering major. And it's as easy as emailing your advisor saying, hey, I actually don't want to do this anymore. And you can switch majors the next day. That being said, the number of times you switch and when you switch is all dependent on your course plan. The later that you switch your major, the more time you could be adding to your degree, considering it, you still have to fulfill all those degree requirements. That being said, I started out in biomedical engineering. I was pre-med and I thought I was going to be a pediatric doctor. I discovered that I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. And specifically, what we were learning in biomedical engineering just wasn't what I saw myself doing with my career. And so I'd taken a programming class and I had really liked it. I loved the problem solving aspect of it. And I liked that I could take my programming skills anywhere, whether I wanted to be in the health field one day and then switch it to finance the next day. It was a skill that's really transferable. And so that's when I told my advisor, hey, I want to switch to computer science, made the switch. And since then, I've been loving it ever since. And so my long-term plan is to still eventually do health and tech and with starting my own health tech startup. I've even worked at a health tech startup that was really, really fun. But in the meantime, I've been working at Microsoft and enjoying that experience as well. So switching your majors is all about kind of finding what you think you'll succeed at, what you want to do. And not everyone switches their major. I don't necessarily think it's super common, but it's also not hard in Viterbi specifically. Has anyone else switched majors or wanted to like touch on that experience at all?
I switched, but it was a very short hop. I went from electrical and computer engineering to computer engineering, computer science. The reason I made that switch was because I wanted to be taking computer science classes from computer science professors and not electrical engineering ones. Um, I think as CCS, I get the best of both worlds. I take classes based directly in the department in which they were intended to be. But the real reason is because I didn't want to take physics. I already had AP credit. The ECE department was not having it with me. And I was like, okay, how about CS? And they were like, we'll take it. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And so I switched.
Yeah, that's fair. It was interesting as like you can switch to majors you've had experience. Like for you, it was a short jump, so it's very interrelated. But for me, it was very large. Like anytime I tell someone I switched, they're like, wow, how was that? And honestly, it just depends on the person. But prior to that one programming class I'd taken, I'd never really studied computer science in high school or anything. And so it was a big jump or learning curve trying to learn what computer science was and getting acclimated in the classes. But that being said, the support that was out there, whether it was my professors, office hours, all those things really got me up to speed. And I was very comfortable in the classes within the first couple semesters. So another question that we have is, how are engineering clubs and are they competitive to get into?
I can answer this one. So it really depends on which clubs you're going to be joining. Some of them are very competitive. So Lava Lab is probably one of the most competitive ones. We got 800 applications and we take 28 people per semester. So you're looking at a pretty low acceptance rate there. There are multiple rounds of interviews. So you're looking at a written application, 3 rounds of interviews, technical, behavioral, along with like, dev challenges, different roles, whatever that may be. Different roles as well you can apply for. So many of the clubs are kind of specialized. You apply as a position. So you can apply as a developer, you can apply as a designer, you can apply as a product manager. Just about any CS club, any technical club, you will be looking at multiple rounds of interviews. You will have applications. There is specialization, but I will say it's definitely worth it. I joined a lot of these clubs the second I got here, and it's probably the best decision I've made. The network you make is beyond valuable. You're going to be dealing with people who are super smart, super experienced. They've done what you want to do already, and they're super willing to help you out. So I would definitely recommend apply early. And for most people, it doesn't work out early on. Like people will apply to these clubs multiple times before getting in, and that's very normal. So again, don't feel discouraged. Just keep going after it, and definitely try everything. If you're in CS, for example, try every club related to it, right? Like if you don't know if you like startups or not, apply to a startup club. If you're not sure if you like this, there's probably a club for it, and definitely apply and join it. Especially as a freshman, you don't know what you like because you don't have that experience yet. And that only comes with time. You just have to do the actual things. And the seniors here can definitely speak to that. The longer you spend just doing different things, whether that be, in quant finance and startups, in hardware, whatever that is, you will find your interest and that will lead into your internships or whatever else. So definitely all those clubs and definitely do clubs that are non-academic as well. Have some fun with it. Find a sport, play an IM sport, do something, Don't just be super locked into your CS clubs. Do that too, but definitely have fun as well.
Flip side, I'm in a number of civil engineering based clubs, which that would be American Society of Civil Engineer. I looked at Earth, what is it? Earthquake Engineering Research Institute, I think was the abbreviation, ERI, and Institute of Transportation Engineers. And those in particular, those didn't require any sort of applications to join. They're kind of specific about making sure the members like come to meetings, but even those, like if you need to miss weeks, it's understandable because stuff's missing. So I think leadership in these clubs is fairly competitive. But there are a number, I will say that there's a number of engineering clubs that it's just kind of you show up and you participate, and then you get out of it what you put in.
Totally agree with all that was stated. And so we did kind of have a follow-up question about someone's mentioning that they felt like clubs at Viterbi might only be for students with experience. And is that true? And so I'm going to say, as someone who was club fiend in my freshman year, I was joining anything and everything just to see what it was like. That is not true at all. There are going to be a wide variety of clubs, whether it's the ones that are super selective and you go through multiple rounds of interviews and different things. And a lot of that's just due to interest and not being able to accommodate everyone interested in that organization. But there's also many clubs catered towards just trying to build your experience. One of them was called 3D for E. It's a club I joined. It stands for 3D printing for everyone. And the whole purpose is teaching people how to 3D print. They want you to come with no experience. They want you to come ready to learn, and they have all the facilities available to teach you, from whether it's the subscriptions to the 3D design kind of applications, to the printers, to 24/7 help when it comes to almost like TAs, but in a very informal sense to support your development. And so when it comes to that, I think there's so many clubs here that there's never just one, and there's always going to be something for you and something for you to get involved in for a variety of interests, whether you feel like you're coming into Viterbi with years of experience and you're ready to build a car automatically versus you're coming just to learn. And also many organizations meet you where you are. A lot of these organizations aren't necessarily, even if they are doing these interviews and different things, looking for the expert in the field for, let's say, Lava Lab. Oftentimes they're just looking for someone who is the most willingness to learn and who would be the best fit for the team. So I hope that really helps clarify as far as kind of clubs at Viterbi. And the crazy thing is there's so many here that if there's a club here that you're not seeing that you want to do, you can always create it as well. I also want to note that all clubs are open to all majors. So whether it is our solar design car club to something that can be focused on computer science, it doesn't matter what major you are. If it's something that you're interested in, you can be a part of that club. And so one more question on involvements. I'd love to hear someone share more about, are there any specific opportunities for biomedical engineering majors? What are some clubs that biomedical engineering majors are drawn to, or opportunities that they can take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only biomedical engineering here, so kind of have to answer. Um, yeah, like I said, there's the Associated Students of Biomedical Engineers. That's a big club. There's an application process. Anybody can come in. I know people that aren't even in studying biomedical engineering are in that club. So, and ASBME offers a lot of networking opportunities, social events, socializing opportunities, professional opportunities. Everything that's related to BME is you can pretty much find in ASBME. Along with that, there's also Med Design, which is a design team kind of focused organization. That one you do have to apply. And essentially, from what I know, you're placed in teams and you're essentially trying to find a problem within the medical field and building some type of prototype that can solve this problem. And I know it's a big club for people that are studying biomedical engineering. Resources, I mean, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of research. That there's a whole building called Michelson Center for Convergent Biosciences, which it hosts a lot of biomedical engineering focused labs. So yeah, there's really all types of things that you can do here in biomedical engineering, whether again it is professional, simply academic, or socializing within the biomedical engineering community. I think you can find it all here.
I also know a lot of the biomedical engineering students are at BMES, if that's how you pronounce it, or BMES. It's their biomedical
Yeah,
engineering conference. Yeah. Is
yeah, they're
BMES how you
there
guys
right
say it?
now. Huh?
Is BMES? Like, is that what you all say?
BMES.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I went last year. I didn't want to go this year again because I already went once. But yeah, they're there right now.
Where is it this year?
Baltimore.
Ooh, Baltimore's fun. I actually was
Mhm.
just there.
Sorry, there's a reel on the Instagram of Ishani, one of our other students there right now. So if you want to check that out.
There's a question that mentions, do Viterbi students interact with other majors at USC often? And I want to go ahead and answer, and then if anyone else's answers, definitely share. But I would say yes. Honestly, most of my friends aren't in engineering. I do have a lot of engineering friends, whether it's in clubs and class, but beyond that, like all my closest friends that I've lived with for the past couple of years are in every other discipline of the school. Some of them study cognitive science, pharmaceutical, pre-med, even some in the arts. And so I really think that's been a beautiful piece of the campus as well, because I've really been able to engage in every little corner of things. As far as I know about the shows that are going on, I know about the sports teams things because my friends on the basketball team. I know about people doing business stuff. Like knowing people in all these different areas of the campus is important because it enhances your overall USC experience. But have you guys found that you've been able to interact with other majors outside of people in Viterbi?
Within the different, I've been able to interact with different departments of Viterbi and completely different schools throughout. Mostly it's club activities that I'm seeing people in different majors, but even some of the engineering clubs will have business students or policy students or stuff like that because uh, real life applications of engineering are complicated and require more than just engineers. It requires like Institute of Transportation engineers is some engineers, but it's a lot of public policy people and some mathematics people and some business people. Those are opportunities to see other people. And in terms of my close friends and people that I like seeing on campus, a good number of them are engineers because that's who I'm seeing a lot in my classes. But in classes that aren't strictly engineering, I'm meeting people from other schools and then I interact with them a good deal.
Realize it was muted. That's amazing. So another question that we have in the chat is one for Jake, actually. Jake, someone wants to know, how did you get a research opportunity at Caltech?
So I had this opportunity before coming to USC as well. Uh, I'm from Glendale, which is really close to Caltech. Pasadena is pretty close. But it was just a lot of outreach. They were actually looking for a few people just to intern as part of like research opportunities. So my specific lab is computational astrophysics. So we deal with applying computer science and like developing software to aid in research surrounding stars and planets. So I just emailed the professor. I'm like, look, I'm interested. I'm aspiring to be a computer science major at the time. And I said, like, what's the next step? So there was a technical interview. Met up with him, the grad students, and all that. It was a process, but it worked out really well. I would definitely say the main step to getting it was just outreach. I mean, if you feel intimidated by an opportunity, don't, because there's no one better than you to apply. Don't shoot yourself in the foot and not apply for things just because you think you're not good enough. You are good enough. So I would definitely say a big thing for me for landing it was just I just applied everything. I mean, I asked Caltech, I emailed people at UCLA, and Caltech happened to land first. So that's what happened. And since then, it's been great. I just published 2 papers in the Astrophysical Journal recently. So that was a really big accomplishment. Past 2 years of work with the team, we finally saw it come to fruition. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it's all about just really putting yourself out there, and that goes beyond research. Anything at USC, whatever it is, don't feel scared to talk to anyone. Go up to a professor, go up to a senior, go up to anyone that is interesting to you and you want to learn more about them or more about the opportunity, and just go talk to them. Don't feel scared, don't feel intimidated. Everyone wants to help you, and if you're eager to help and you have some track record of being capable, people are glad to take you. Even though I'm working with guys who, the PhD, he's published 600 papers. I mean, the guy's like, he's way smarter than anyone I know will ever be, and any smarter than I'll be. But even then, he's such I call him by his first name. I'll put it that way. He's such a nice guy, and you wouldn't know that unless you talk to him. So in terms of landing opportunities like that specifically, and just research in general at USC, they make it very easy, by the way, through Curve and all of that. But just, yeah, reach out. That's the main thing. Email everyone. Just keep sending. It's a numbers game. Just keep sending emails, keep messaging, do whatever you have to do, and something will hit.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And that's a really good point that you're making as far as the points of reaching out and just trying to make yourself available and reach out to people of interest. I think that's valid when it comes to finding research, networking with professors, networking with your peers, even networking with alumni. You'll see that the alumni network here is unique. Like anything else, I can at least speak to as far as anyone I've ever seen on LinkedIn, if they're somehow halfway associated with USC, if I reach out to them and say, hey, I'm a current student, I'd love to learn more about XYZ, they've always been willing to help, have set up a one-on-one, have further conversations. And that's been with wherever I've went, whether it's jobs, traveling, all those things. I even met someone who's now like big time, wrote a book, got famous, went to USC for 1 year and dropped out. But the fact that we just had USC in common, like automatically had bonded us and created a space for conversation. And so we're getting a lot of questions on student life. And so I'd love to hear some more thoughts on, I guess, how would you guys say is the food here? How is campus life? Do you guys feel safe on campus? And if anyone's an out-of-state student, would anyone like to speak to that experience and adjustment being out of state? Sorry, a lot of different categories, but want to give space for anyone to talk about basically anything related to student life. And I could start off honestly by being an out-of-state student. And so I'm originally from Florida. And when I committed to USC, I hadn't been west of Texas. Like I didn't get to see the campus. I looked at a couple pictures. I thought it looked pretty. I said I'll figure it out when I get there. And I just decided to come. And so definitely big culture shock. I mean, being far away from home, different foods. West Coast is very different from the East Coast and all of those different things. But I think the one thing that really made me feel at home immediately was honestly the people. When we said Viterbi was a collaborative nature, I don't think that just is exclusive towards Viterbi students. I'd say as a whole, this campus is just a really friendly campus, whether it's trying to find something, needing help, support, getting lost in classes, all of these things. It's such a great space to be in a collaborative nature overall. On top of that, we have this thing called Welcome Week, which for your first week of classes, it's completely full of events just to help you meet people, talk to others, make friendships, make connections across campus. And the whole week is dedicated to that since your classes haven't started yet. And so my adjustment honestly was really good. I was happy to be here. It's sunny California. You can't really complain. The weather is gorgeous 98% of the time. Unless it's at 2% of the time, there's a hurricane and an earthquake going on at the same time. That happened like once. But other than that, it was a really great place to be. And when it comes to food options and all those things, there's just lots of things to do and lots of places to visit. So even if food on campus wasn't your cup of tea, there's so many food places around campus. If there wasn't anything on campus you like to do, there's so much to do around campus. And being in a big city, you have a lot of access to things to do. I almost found that there's too many things to do. So that being said, I love the adjustment. I love the experience. And it's been a great time for me.
So being out of state, that hurricane, I forget what they called it, but like the vestiges of a hurricane and then an earthquake happening at the same time. That was my first weekend being here at USC. Like once my parents left, that was the first weekend, and everyone's like, are you good? Like you go there and everything's falling apart immediately, and I'm like, I don't know. They told me I was like, they told me it didn't rain here. But it really doesn't rain that much in LA, and that's been a bit of a weird adjustment. The weather's a genuinely I'm from New Jersey. I don't know if I said that. I think the weather's a bit of an adjustment, but the one thing my favorite part about LA is USC because I don't really have to leave campus to live my life. Everything that I need is within like this 1 mile by 1 mile radius. I forget exactly what the area is, but campus is like this dense concentration of resources and student opportunity and entertainment and clubs and everything. So I've been able to stay in this area and I really don't have to leave for things. And when I do, it's usually with friends and going out to Koreatown for a Korean barbecue or concert opportunities. But yeah.
Yeah, the everything being on campus kind of reminiscent to our whole Trader Joe's talk in Target and living on top of just almost everything you really need on campus.
Yeah, everything I need to buy, it's right there.
Yeah. And so we are getting close to time, but before we finish off these questions, of course, I have to ask the big one to all of our panelists. Why USC?
I can start. So I'm also an out-of-state student. I'm from Virginia. And so one thing that I was considering was I wanted to be a great engineer. And I obviously applied to a lot of great engineering schools, had many programs that could have chosen from. But I think at the end of the day, you can be a great engineer anywhere. But I wanted to be more than an engineer. And at USC, you really anything you could have ever wanted, they offer that at this university. You want to study dance, you want to study journalism, you want to study music, or you just want to be a normal engineer. Any of that is possible at USC. And I think combined with just the sheer opportunity of LA, California, that is what made me consider USC in the first place, but ultimately fall in love with it. Like Taylor touched upon, the weather here is wonderful 98% of the time. And it's just, there's so much to do, so much to learn from, so many resources. And I knew that I could be a journalist, I could be an engineer here at USC. In terms of meeting people from all over the world, that was also possible. That was one of my goals. And just really learning a lot and growing. I think that it seemed like there wasn't really an upper bound to what kind of person I could grow into at USC. And I think that that is ultimately why I chose USC and why I still love it here, why I'm here talking about it with you guys today.
Yeah, I'll go before somebody else says my answer. Again, I just have to reiterate the people, the community, the collaborative nature, as everybody has been saying. I think that's really like my why USC. Everyone here, especially within the School of Engineering, is super friendly, super willing to help you out, super welcoming. Whenever I need help on homework or whenever I want to study for an exam, a midterm, a final, I think the environment here is very conducive towards a very friendly and a very collaborative environment, and then that's what really highlights USC for me, and that's I gotta say that's my favorite thing.
Jake, do you have a why USC?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna say it's how social everyone is. I think it's just the nature of USC. Every campus has its own kind of vibe to the students and everyone. And I think USC is definitely, if I had to put on one word, I would say multi-dimensionality. It's a big word, but you're not gonna meet someone who's only one thing. I'll put it that way. You're never gonna meet someone who's just an engineer or just a pre-med or just this or just that. They're gonna be that. They're gonna be their major, and they do some like really funky thing on the side. Like they play this weird sport or they play this instrument or whatever. For me at least, it's always been about being around people who are conducive to both, academics and career, but also like, dude, you gotta have fun. Like it's still college at the end of the day. You have 4 years, you're never gonna get those time back. So really enjoy it. For me at least, a really big appeal was how big just the social scene is, and definitely take advantage of that. Definitely join the sports. We got loads of club sports, loads of different IM teams. I mentioned that before, but definitely do it. I'm on the lacrosse team here, and it's amazing. And there are engineers on that team as well. One of our captains is a mechanical engineer. There's another guy doing data science. I'm doing computer science. So it's definitely possible to balance a sport and do whatever else you want to do. And that's the main reason. Honestly, being able to go to a school where you have access to an environment where you have athletes who are studying engineering at the same time, that's pretty hard to come by. And seeing people like all these other panelists up here who are doing amazing things and being an engineer and this and that, you just don't find that anywhere else.
Xavier, did you want to share your why USC?
Yeah, I almost started talking when I was muted. That's a classic Zoom blunder. But why USC? I didn't know what USC was when I first applied to it. Again, I'm from New Jersey. I didn't even think about it. It just kind of was like it was on a scholarship list, and I was like, okay, might as well drop an application. Didn't think I'd get in. Then once I figured out a little bit, like, okay, what is this school? What is the engineering program like? What are these resources like? And I was learning about the opportunities and the resources that would be available and just how good of an engineering school, particularly for civil engineering, it was, and the opportunities to take classes at an actual really, really good architecture school. I kind of hit a point where it was a big leap, but I said, if I don't go, I'm gonna keep asking myself, well, what would have happened if I did go? So I decided I'd take the leap. Um, and it has paid off.
And then last thing I'll add for why USC is I think it's been looking back on the past couple years, it's really been a place that's been invested in my success. Touched on it a little bit, but just as overall mental health, well-being, academic, I've really thrived and taken advantage of everything that the school's offered. And that's been something that's been super special, even in my extracurriculars, being able to be funded to conferences, me getting interviewed on campus. I've had access to all these different opportunities because it's felt like a place that's wanted me to succeed. So that's a little bit about my why USC. So panelists, I want to thank you again for coming to this live chat. That was our final question. And so students, I do hope that you all gain some insight on what it's like to be an engineering student at USC. If you missed any of the chat, definitely rewatch this entire thing on YouTube. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel and accessible at any time for you to watch. As far as the admissions office, we'd love to help you stay connected with Viterbi. We offer information sessions, which is a great time to learn more about some of your more admissions related questions when it comes to the application and other things. If you're interested in an info session, you can register at viterbiadmission.usc.edu/visit. You can also take a picture of the screen so you can save it for later. And then we just want to shout out some amazing resources for you all to take advantage of. As a quick reminder, the early action deadline is fast approaching. It's November